You've probably noticed that Japanese whiskey is everywhere these days. It's gone from being a kind of niche curiosity to one of the most respected, most sought-after spirits on the entire planet. But this didn't happen overnight. Oh no. This is a story that's been a century in the making, a story of obsession, incredible precision, and just a relentless drive for perfection. So let's get into it.
Right now, the words Japanese whiskey just mean quality. They mean rarity. They mean prestige. We're talking about a spirit that commands not just respect, but honestly, some jaw-dropping prices. And what's so cool is that this is a story about a student who didn't just learn from the master, they ended up carving out their own spot right at the top.
And when I say jaw-dropping, I'm not kidding. Look at this. In 2020, a single bottle of Yamazaki 55, one of the oldest Japanese whiskeys ever bottled, sold for $800,000. At that point, it's not even really a drink anymore, is it? For collectors, this is liquid treasure. It's rarer and, you could argue, more valuable than a piece of fine art.
And look, this isn't some flash in the pan. This success has been building for decades. The first real shockwave that got the world's attention was back in 2001, when a Nikka whiskey won a huge international award. Then, a couple years later, Suntory's Yamazaki started a winning streak that just went on and on. In fact, think about this. From 2007 all the way to 2025, a Japanese whiskey has won a top prize at the World Whiskies Awards every single year. That is not a fluke. That is dominance.
So that consistency, that excellence, it brings us to the big question, right? How on earth did this happen? How did an industry that started out by, let's be honest, meticulously copying Scotland, end up creating something so unique and so iconic? To figure that out, we've got to go all the way back to the beginning.
The story of Japanese whiskey really comes down to the story of two men. You have this visionary entrepreneur with a massive dream, and then you have this brilliant, determined student who literally traveled halfway across the world to learn the secrets of Scotland's most famous product.
So on one hand, you've got Shinjiro Tori. He's the founder of what would become Suntory. He was the businessman, the one who was convinced he could make a world-class whiskey for the Japanese people. And then you have Masataka Taketsuru, the guy he hired to actually make it. Taketsuru was the first Japanese person ever to go to Scotland and formally study whiskey making, and he brought all that priceless knowledge back home.
And once they got going, things moved fast. By 1923, Japan's very first distillery, Yamazaki, was up and running. The first official whiskey was on the shelves by 1929. But, partnerships between a visionary and a purist, they don't always last. Taketsuru eventually left to build his own distillery, Yoi, in a place he thought was a perfect match for the climate of the Scottish Highlands. And just like that, you had the two great rival houses of Japanese whiskey, Suntory and Nikka.
So the blueprint was pure Scotch, no doubt about it. But that imitation very quickly turned into innovation. See, Japanese distillers didn't just copy the process. They adapted it, they obsessed over it, and they started adding these uniquely Japanese touches that would eventually define the whole category.
Now, this is a really, really important difference. In Scotland, it's super common for distilleries to trade whiskey with each other. A blender from one company will use malts from a dozen other competing companies. But in Japan, that just doesn't happen. The big guys, Suntory and Nikka, they're completely self-sufficient, and that forced them to become absolute masters of diversity, learning how to make every single style of whiskey they might need, all under their own roofs.
Then you've got the climate. Japan's seasons are way more dramatic than Scotland's. You have hotter summers, colder winters, and those big temperature swings make the wooden barrels, the casks, breathe more. The wood expands and contracts, pushing the spirit in and out of the oak. It basically speeds up the whole aging process and creates a totally different kind of flavor development.
And of course, you can't talk about Japanese whiskey without talking about the wood itself. While most of the world uses American or European oak, Japan has its own secret weapon, Mizunara. This stuff is a rare, native Japanese oak, and it's famously difficult to work with. But if you're patient enough, the flavor it gives a whiskey is, well, it's unlike anything else in the world.
I mean, just listen to how whiskey expert David Broom describes it. He says the aroma is like aloes wood and similar to sandalwood, with notes of coconut, spice, and cedar. And he mentions it's often called temple smell. Isn't that incredible? It gives the whiskey this incense-like, spicy, exotic character that is just so quintessentially Japanese.
The whole aging process, or maturation, is really like a three-part magic trick. First, it's additive. The wood adds things to the whiskey, like color and flavors of vanilla and spice. Second, it's subtractive. The charred layer inside the barrel acts like a filter, pulling out harsh flavors. And third, it's interactive, where oxygen and the spirit and the wood all react together over years and years to create brand new, incredibly complex flavors.
And the whole art form, the entire job of a master blender is to find that perfect sweet spot. They have to know exactly when to pull the whiskey out of the cask. That perfect moment where the barrel has added all its beautiful character, but before it starts to overpower the original spirit from the still. It takes incredible patience and, frankly, genius.
Now, you might think with all this success, it was just a straight line to the top. But not exactly. The story of whiskey's popularity in Japan has been an absolute roller coaster, with a huge boom, a nearly fatal crash, and one of the most amazing comebacks in the drinks world.
So after the Second World War, whiskey got super popular in Japan. It led to these whiskey wars between the big producers, and consumption hit an all-time high in 1983. But then, taste changed. The industry just fell off a cliff. By 2008, people were drinking only 20% of what they had been at the peak. Imagine that. 80% of your market just gone. Distilleries had to scale way back. Some even shut down for good. And just when things looked totally bleak, a simple drink changed everything. The unlikely hero of this story? The humble highball. Just whiskey and soda. Suntory launched this brilliant marketing campaign that completely repositioned whiskey. It wasn't just for old men in armchairs anymore. It was now a light, refreshing, easy-drinking option that was perfect with food. It exploded in the izakayas, the pubs of Japan, and it was an absolutely genius move that made whiskey cool again and basically saved the entire industry.
Okay, so we've been talking a lot about flavor and complexity. So let's get practical for a minute. How can you actually appreciate all this stuff in your own glass? Well, there's a pretty simple 4-step process that the pros use, and anyone can do it.
First, just look at it. Check out the color. Give it a swirl. Next, and this is maybe the most important part, is nosing. You want to smell it gently, with your mouth open just a little bit. That's where you get most of the aromas. Then, you finally taste it. Just a small sip, let it coat your whole mouth. And last, pay attention to the finish. Those flavors that stick around after you swallow. How long does it last?
And hey, don't worry if you can't immediately say, oh, that's sandalwood and dried apricot. Nobody starts there. Just think in bigger categories. Are you smelling fruit? Okay, cool. Is it fresh fruit, like an apple, or is it more like dried fruit, like a raisin? Is it sweet, like vanilla, or is it spicy, like cinnamon? Using a guide like this just helps you build up your own mental library of smells over time.
So, where does all this leave us? What's next for Japanese whiskey? Well, the industry is right in the middle of 2 gigantic changes that are going to define its next chapter. A massive, massive expansion. And, for the very first time, some actual rules about what Japanese whiskey even is.
The global demand has just created this unbelievable boom. Get this, back in 2011, there were fewer than 10 distilleries operating in Japan. Fast forward to the mid-2020s, and that number is over 100, either operating or being built. We're seeing a huge new wave of smaller, craft producers jumping into the game.
And this is a huge deal. The industry has finally created its own rulebook. It used to be that some bottles labeled Japanese whiskey might have actually contained whiskey imported from other countries. But these new rules, which took full effect in 2024, guarantee that if the label says Japanese whiskey, then the entire process from start to finish had to happen in Japan. It's all about protecting the category and giving us, the consumers, confidence in what we're buying.
And all of this brings us to a really fascinating question for the future. You've got this identity that's not protected by law, and you've got this explosion of new, smaller, more agile producers. So what happens now? Will the future of Japanese whiskey be about perfecting the classic styles that made it famous? Or are we about to see a whole new era of bold experiments and wild innovation? Honestly, either way, the next decade is going to be amazing to watch.